So, Congressman, since yesterday, have you talked to the president? And
I have
what was
not.
his
I
response?
have not talked to him personally. Spent some time with Mark Meadows last night, and I know Mark had talked to him a couple times, but I did not. I've talked to him several times last week, but not in the last couple of weeks, but not yesterday.
Was he happy with, based on what Mark Meadows said, was he happy with the defense?
Well, look, I think the defense team got across the key message, which was, the Democrats are trying to cancel the guy that 74 million Americans voted for. And they're so obsessed with doing that. Remember, they tried to remove President Trump from office before he got there. They're trying to remove him from office now that he's already left. They're so obsessed with this, they ignore the Constitution, they ignore due process, and frankly, they're ignoring the facts. The simple fact that wasn't in the video, there was a key line that the president said in his speech that wasn't in the video that the Democrats put on, and that was peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. So I think the defense team got that across, and I think that's the key point here. This thing is not constitutional. There was no due process on the House side at all, and the facts support the president and that he did not incite any type of breach of the Capitol whatsoever. On
due process, the impeachment the Trump defense is saying on the one hand it was a snap impeachment. On the other hand, they're saying the president's no longer in office anymore, the former president. So which is it?
Well, it's both. I mean, it was a 2-hour impeachment. It was, as my colleague Matt Gaetz says, it was impeachment by reflex. So this impeachment makes Adam Schiff look like he was fair a year ago, and we know that he wasn't. The president didn't get to call any witnesses in that one, but at least in that one, even though they did it in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol, at least we were able to question witnesses. There were some depositions. We got to have some hearings. But this doesn't even come close to that.
But isn't that what the point of this trial is for due process? The impeachment managers called the president to testify, and he said he didn't want to.
Well, that's a fundamental right you have under the Constitution. That's between the president and his lawyers. But the investigation should have happened in the House. Didn't. They rushed this impeachment, and then they said, oh, this is so important. This is so critical. You can't have this January surprise, as Mr. Raskin pointed out yesterday. Well, if that was the case, if this was so critical, why did Nancy Pelosi wait to send the articles to the Senate? She could have sent them over on the 13th. We could have had this. The trial could have been going on while the president was still in office.
If this is not impeachable, then what is?
No, this again does everything the Democrats put on yesterday doesn't change the fundamental facts. How do you remove someone from office who's no longer there? How do you do a process like this where there's no due process for the President of the United States? And of course, this does not even come close to the level of incitement that is in the Brandenburg test that the Supreme. You got to have the person has to be advocating for lawless activity. It has to be imminent, and they have to have an intent for that to happen. None of those elements are present in the president's speech. And what we do know is, how do you incite some breach of the Capitol that was already planned? How do you incite some breach of the Capitol when the president specifically said, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard? And if the Democrats travel down this road, this is a dangerous road. Because all last summer, there were comments made that I think go much closer to what the Brandenburg test is in inciting violence. Specifically when we had one of our colleagues here in the House say we need more unrest in the streets.
They are not the President of the United States who don't.
They're a member of Congress.
Following.
They're the Speaker of the House. They're the former Attorney General. They're a United States Senator. They're a member of the Congress. And they all said things last summer. Some of them even raised money to bail out the people who were engaged in the harm. One of them said we need more unrest in the streets. While there was unrest in the streets, if that's not closer to incitement than anything the President said, I don't know what is.
So if Joe Biden in November of 2024, after the election, he loses and said there was a rigged, stolen, fraudulent election. More than 60 court cases have either dismissed or disagreed with that claim. He calls local election officials to try to get them to interfere in the outcome of already certified elections, and calls on Black Lives Matter protesters and his following to come to the Capitol and to protest. And they break into the Capitol to try to stop the Congress from overturning or from counting the Electoral College votes. You are going to defend Joe Biden then?
I'm going to tell you what happened this election. What happened this election is in the run-up to the election, Democrats knew that they had to change the rules in order to beat President Trump. And so in several key states, what they did is they changed election law in an unconstitutional fashion. That's what I argued on the House floor on January 6th, because that's what happened.
State legislatures had changed the election law. And so
Republicans say that
that's a
great point. That's not what they did.
should be governed by the
It was state Supreme Courts, partisan Supreme Courts who went around the legislature. It was Secretary of State Bookfar, for example, in Pennsylvania, who went around the legislature and said, we're not going to do signature verification for 2.6 million ballots, even though the people who voted in person on the day of the election had to have signature verification. It was county clerks who in some counties said, we're going to let ballots be processed ahead of time, even though the law specifically said you cannot process ballots until Election Day. They allowed some ballots to be cured and fixed, and you can imagine which counties did it. It was Democrat-run counties.
Okay, so
all those people went around.
I thought Republicans believed that the states and the localities should govern elections, not the federal government. That the Congress should not decide how local states do their elections.
We think the Constitution should be followed. The Constitution is very clear. State legislatures set the time, place, and manner of elections. Straight out of the Constitution. What happened in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia is they went around the state legislature in an unconstitutional fashion, and that's what we objected to.
So what should the president have done? Should he have done the whole thing differently? Should he have not continued to say that the election was stolen from him?
You know what we should have done differently? We should have had a stronger security posture here on January 6th. We should have maybe listened to the Capitol Hill Police, who asked the Sergeant of Arms to have National Guard here on January 6th. And we should definitely, going forward, prosecute the people who did the harm to the Capitol and committed violence and took the lives of Officer Sicknick and others who were injured in that day.
Where were you on January 6th?
I was on the House floor. Yeah, I was arguing. I mean, I was arguing our points that I just talked about, objecting to the unconstitutional fashion in which some states changed their election law.
What were you feeling? You can argue with the presentation yesterday, but when you saw that video yesterday, what were you feeling?
Well, look, none of us like to see what took place on that day. It was tragic, it was terrible, it was wrong, and it's why the folks who engaged in the violence should be prosecuted.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.